Welcome to the second part of the control group guide. In the first part I explained how control groups work in general, what hotkeys you can use for them, and so on. In this second part I will explain how you might want to assign your control groups and give general tips for that. Now there are two different versions of the second part. There's the version right here that you're watching right now, which is the shorter, more compact version, where I just explain pretty much the basics and you will probably be able to make up the rest for yourself, how you might want to do your control groups and so on. And in the other part, the much longer version, I just give a lot more examples on a lot of different unit compositions for all the races, and also I go into more detail for everything I mentioned basically. So if you really have no clue at all and you think you could really use some more examples and also more detailed explanation, then go check out the other video. But if you just want some short, quick tips and a few examples, then stay here. Now let's start off with control groups in general. Basically, what it comes down to when assigning control groups is control groups are designed to make the control of the game easier and make it so you have an easier time to control your units and buildings. So it's basically just a convenience tool. So looking at buildings now, what I personally do with buildings is the following. I have my altar on group 4. It is the same for every race. Pretty much what I mentioned now. Altar is on 4. Production buildings are on 5, main building is on 6, and blacksmith or my upgrade building like a wall mill, hunter's hall, graveyard would be on group 7. And this would be the same for orc, undead, and night elf because buildings are pretty much the same. Now what I do for human in specific is I group my arcane towers on group 8 because oftentimes you have the reveal ability on your arcane towers and you might oftentimes want to use it really quickly to reveal a blade master and get the kill on him, or to quickly scout your opponent's base or whatever. And I find it really convenient to group your arcane towers, all of them, all of the arcane towers you have on the map. Because if you don't group them, you always have to move your camera back to your base, you have to select all your arcane towers somehow, and then you can check the cooldown. And if you have an expansion, you have arcane towers over there, so you need to select those individually as well, move the camera again. And it's just quite a hassle to finally find an arcane tower that doesn't have reveal on cooldown. And if you have them in one group, you easily see the collective cooldown of all of the arcane towers at the same time. So if there's a reveal ready, you will instantly know and will be able to instantly use it. If you're, for example, in the middle of the map, you can just quickly select them like this and use the reveal right away, instead of first moving to your base and so on. I guess you get the point by now. Now looking at units, what I would do with units pretty much is I group my units on control groups 1, 2, and 3. Sometimes I also have some units on control group 4 instead of altar if I really have a lot of different units, or just a lot of units in general when I break into high upkeep. But usually, for example, if I have an early game army like this would be my control group 1. Troll Shadow Priest would be control group 2. And here also just a quick tip. The reason why I put my Troll Shadow Priest on control group 2 is because he is quite easy to kill, he is quite squishy in general. So if he gets attacked, I need to be able to micro him immediately while the rest of my army is supposed to keep attacking. And another reason is that the Troll Shadow Priest is a spellcaster. I want to have easy access to abolish magic to quickly dispel water elementals, and also to just micro him really fast and so on. So it is just more convenient to have one separate group for the Troll Shadow Priest because he just works differently than the other units do pretty much. And my control group 3 in this case would be my militia, because I oftentimes also want to pull my militia into a fight to help with that. So I would have all the control groups from 1 to 8 basically if I have arcane towers and blacksmith as well. Now also looking at unit compositions, let's say you have knights and spellbreakers. Those I would put into control group 1, for example, if I have this Travis here as well. And I would also put them together in a group with my heroes, because they all just have pretty much the same task in a fight, especially the knights and spellbreakers here. because they are both melee. They're not really spellcasters. I mean, the spellbreakers kind of are, but it's not as important as a priest with dispel and so on. Like, you don't use spell seal so specifically. And also, usually spellcasters like priests are quite squishy, so you need to micro them easily, like the Troll Shadow Priest earlier. But for Spellbreaker, it's not the case. They are more of a melee unit. They are good for frontlining, they are good for surrounding, and that's why they synergize with the Knight so well as well, so you definitely put them in one group. Because there's really no good reason to have the Spellbreakers in one group and the Knights in one separate group. Now also, Gyros would be in a separate group for sure. Because another thing is, if you would group those units here together with Gyros in one group, Gyros, you usually only use them as anti-air, while Breakers and Knights are only against ground units, so it just wouldn't synergize so well, and also with the pathing it would kind of mess up, because those air units here can fly across trees and such, while the ground units can't, so it's just inconvenient to control them like this. And also, the bottom line of control groups for units in general is, and also for buildings, I guess, the main thing you want to pay attention to is that the units you put into a control group together, they are supposed to synergize with each other. So, Knights and Spellbreakers synergize well. Knights and Gyros don't. So the main thing is just control groups are there to make the game easier to control for you, and you should assign your control groups in a way that they synergize with each other, the units in that control group. So also, if you look at this, for example, in this case here, if I would be playing against undead that usually have air units, I would put my Demon Hunter and Druids in one group, because they all can attack anti-air. Demon Hunter is AWP for that. And Panda and Bears can only attack ground units, so I put them into a different group. So I have anti-air units, and also Druids have to move around a lot to dodge meat wagon shots, for example, if he has those. And Bears are more for A moving. So as I said again, it is just to make the game easier for you, pretty much, and you should put your units in groups that synergize with each other. And that is basically really it. Also, another important thing that some people maybe forget to keep in mind is, assign your control groups in a way that you think is convenient for you personally. Completely copying the control groups of another player can work out quite well for you. It can also not work out at all, because it really comes down to personal preference. Some people prefer to have their altar production buildings and main building on groups 1, 2, 3, and army on groups 4, 5, and 6, for example. I myself find it really inconvenient. So basically, to sum it up again, do your control groups in a way that are convenient to use, and put your units in different control groups depending on how well they synergize with each other, or if they don't synergize with each other. And also another thing is, as I said earlier, I usually group my militia in group 3. I would do the same for the other races as well. I would group my peons on, for example, group 9, because my peons I don't need to use as often as the militia when I play human. And I still want to group my lumber peons, because I want to be able to quickly repair burrows, quickly send them into burrows, or pull them into a fight to spread spirit link damage. Same goes for lumber ghouls for undead. You might want to quickly pull them to defend or pull them into a fight. And grouping them on, for example, control group 9 is really not that accessible, but I think that's fine in that case, because you only need it once or twice per game anyway. And then it's not such a big deal, and it's totally okay in my opinion. The same goes for Night Elf. I like to oftentimes group some Lumber Wisps if I know that I might have to dispel some summons or slow from a human opponent, or basically whatever else. So that's basically it for this video. Again, if you still want more examples based on those different unit compositions that you can see here, and just a more detailed explanation about some things, then check out the long version of the video. Still, you should have a really good idea by now as well with this video, I guess. And if you still have any questions, requests, or anything, leave it in the comment section below.